The buzz of my smartphone was a persistent, angry insect against the polished mahogany of my desk. I swiped to answer without looking, my eyes glued to the quarterly projections on my dual monitors. Saskia Van Horn. Hey, babe, you're still on speaker, right? Ethan's voice, all easy charm, filled my home office. I minimized the spreadsheet. For the next 45 seconds, I have a call with the Singapore team at 4. Right, right. Listen, Chloe called. She and Mark finally set a date. October 12th. Good for them, I said, scrolling through my calendar. October was packed with client launches. Send them a case of the 18 cab from Mom's Vineyard. My treat. There was a pause, the kind that usually preceded a request Ethan found awkward. Well, that's the thing. They were hoping for something more. They want to have the wedding at Twilight Vines. I stopped scrolling. Twilight Vines was my mother's sanctuary, her life's work post-divorce. 60 acres of pristine Napa Valley land, with the historic farmhouse, the manicured vineyards, and the stunning artificial lake that mirrored the sunset. It wasn't a wedding venue. It was a private estate. Ethan, you know Mom doesn't rent it out. It's her home, but it's family, he said, as if that one word unlocked all doors. Come on, Saskia. It would mean the world to Chloe. Mark's family isn't, well, you know, a rustic chic wedding at her big sister-in-law's gorgeous wine estate. It's all she's talked about since we got engaged. The subtle dig at Mark's less affluent family. The casual invocation of Hiri State that IT was mine only by blood and love. Not legal ownership, but the emotional leverage. Classic Reed family playbook. I felt the first prickle of a tension headache behind my temples. It's not my call, Ethan. It's Mom's. So ask her. You're her only daughter. She can't say no to you. His tone was breezy, confident in my influence. The confidence of a man who'd never had to truly ask for anything because the women in his life, that first his mother. Now Mead handled the logistics and the costs. I'll talk to her, I said, non-committal, but no promises. And if, and it's a big if, she agrees, your family handles all the coordination with the estate manager. I'm swamped with the Viridian tech launch. You're the best. Babe, I'll tell Chloe. Love you. The line went dead. My 45 seconds were up. Talking to my mother, Eleanor, was both easier and harder than I'd anticipated. Easier because her love was a boundless, gentle thing. Harder because I could hear the hesitation in her voice over the phone. Chloe's a sweet girl, Mom said slowly, and it is such a beautiful place for a wedding. But, I prompted, leaning against the floor-to-ceiling window of my Soma condo, watching the fog swallow the Bay Bridge. But it's a lot. Honey, the logistics, the strangers on the property, the potential for damage. We just reseeded the south lawn by the lake. It was frightfully expensive. I know. I told Ethan his family would have to handle everything through David. David was the unflappable estate manager. I won't let them bulldoze you. Mom, if you're not comfortable, just say no. I'll handle Ethan. There was a long silence. I could picture her in the sun-drenched kitchen of the farmhouse, looking out at her beloved vines. No, she said finally, her voice firming. No, it's for family. I'll do it. For you and Ethan. Just make sure they talk to David. Darling. Every little thing. Guilt. Sharp and unexpected. Pinched me. Mom, you don't have to. I want to. She interrupted, her tone brightening artificially. It'll be fun. I'll even gift them the wine for the reception. The new rose is perfect for a fall afternoon. I closed my eyes. Her generosity was a weapon my in-laws wielded with unconscious expertise. Thank you, Mom. I love you. Love you more. My brilliant girl. Now, go conquer that tech world. I gave Ethan the green light. The subsequent weeks were a blur of my own work chaos. The Viridian launch was a beast, demanding 16-hour days. Ethan's reports from the wedding planning front were characteristically vague and optimistic. Mom and Chloe are handling the details with David. He'd say, waving a hand when I asked about caterers or guest counts. Don't stress. It's under control. You should see the arch Chloe wants by the lake. Incredible. I took him at his word. My role was reduced to approving the date on Mom's calendar and assuring her I'd be there. I transferred a substantial sum to Ethan's account, our joint account, though my deposits were the only thing keeping it afloat, with a note. For wedding stuff, please ensure all vendor deposits are paid promptly. His reply was a kissy face emoji. The day of the wedding dawned, clear and golden. Twilight vines looked like something from a magazine spread. My mother had outdone herself. The lawns were emerald perfection. The lake a sheet of glass, reflecting white draping, and thousands of pale pink peonies. Mom's edition. I learned later, because Chloe's chosen flowers had looked skimpy. The air smelled of grapes, earth, and expensive perfume. Chloe was radiant. Ethan, as best man, was in his element, the charming center of attention. His parents, Barbara and Frank Reed, held court, boasting to Mark's middle-class relatives about our family's vineyard. I bit my tongue until it hurt. My mother worked tirelessly in the background, ensuring the wine flowed and the hired staff didn't trample her precious herb garden. The reception was loud, boozy, and long. A DJ set up on the patio, the bass thumping across the water. I saw David, the estate manager, wince as a group of groomsmen in heavy dress, shoes, trampled across the delicate lakeside lawn for a photo. I started to intervene, but Ethan caught my arm. Relax. Saskia, it's a party. They're having fun. Don't be the fun police. He swayed slightly, champagne in hand. Later, long after the last shuttle bus had carried the guests away, I found Mom alone in the kitchen, silently washing crystal flutes. The quiet was a physical relief after the day's noise. You should have left that for the crew tomorrow, I said, taking a towel. I needed to do something with my hands. She said. Her shoulders were slumped, and there was a smudge of dirt on her cheek. She looked exhausted in a way I hadn't seen since the divorce. Mom, what's wrong? She forced a smile. Nothing. Darling, just tired. It was a beautiful wedding, but her eyes didn't agree. The next morning, I planned to sleep in. My phone rang at 7:03 a.m. It was Mom. Saskia, can you come to the estate office? Now, please. Her voice was thin, strained. All my fatigue vanished. I threw on jeans and a sweater, made the hour-long drive to Napa in record time. David met me at the door of the small office adjacent to the farmhouse. His face was grim. Eleanor is inside, was all he said. My mother sat behind the old oak desk, 2 pieces of paper in front of her. She looked up as I entered. The wane on, embarrassment and difficulty on her face was so profound it stole my breath. What happened? Are you okay? She pushed the first paper toward me. It was an invoice, a detailed, line-item invoice from Napa Valley Elite Events Catering. The total at the bottom was a number that made my professional financier's brain stutter. $84.7, 56.22. The billing address was Twilight Vines Estate. The client name, Chloe Reed Mark Fitzpatrick. A handwritten note was paper-clipped to the top, as per Mrs. Barbara Reed's instruction. All final balances are to be sent directly to the estate for settlement. Thank you for a lovely event. My blood ran cold. I scanned the items. Premium open bar, luxury porta-potty rentals, gourmet late-night snack station, the extravagant floral arch by the lake, the champagne tower. They told the vendor to bill you? My voice was dangerously quiet. Mom nodded, her lips pressed into a white line. She slid the second paper forward. It was a report from the landscaping service. Attached were photos of the south lawn by the lake. The emerald perfection was gone. In its place was a churned-up mess of mud and dead grass. Deep ruts from what looked like heavy equipment, probably the base for that incredible arch, and a vast area stained with what appeared to be wine and worse. The estimated repair cost, $22,000. The DJ's speakers were placed right on the grass. David said quietly from the doorway, compacted it, and the after party it moved down to the lakeshore. They dragged furniture, spilled everything. They used the vintage linen tablecloths as blankets on the ground. Some are ruined. A white-hot fury began to build in my chest. So intense it was almost calm. I looked at my mother's face, at the hurt and the financial anxiety warring in her eyes. She had gifted the wine, upgraded the flowers, opened her home, and they had seen it not as a generous gesture, but as an open invitation to a bottomless bank account. Did you speak to Barbara? Or Chloe? I asked. My tone clipped. I called Barbara this morning. Mom said, her voice trembling slightly. She said, oh, Eleanor, I assumed since it was your place, you'd be covering the incidentals. Chloe and Mark are just starting out. We're family, after all. Then she laughed and asked if I'd saved her some of the good rows. The last thread of my composure snapped. I picked up my cell phone and dialed Ethan's number. He answered on the third ring, his voice thick with sleep and, undoubtedly, a hangover. Hey, babe, what's up? Party was awesome. Huh? Ethan. My voice cut through the line like a shard of ice. Your sister's wedding. The bill. The destroyed lawn. Explain. Now, there was a rustling sound, then a long sigh. Not a sigh of shock or guilt, a sigh of irritation. Jesus. Saskia, is that what this is about? Mom mentioned your mom called. All in a tizzy. Look, it's just some grass. It'll grow back. $84,000. Ethan. The caterer. The florist. Everything. They build twilight vines. And $22,000 for the lawn. That's not some grass. That's a professionally landscaped, irrigated section that your family's guests tore to shreds. Okay, calm down, he said, his tone shifting to the patronizing one he used when he thought I was being dramatic. So there was a little mix-up with the billing. We can sort it out. But come on, your mom owns that place free and clear. She's loaded. What's a few bucks to her? This is family. Chloe's just a kid. This is about memories, not money. Don't be so transactional. Don't be so transactional. The words hung in the air, toxic and revealing. To him, my mother's life's work, my family's legacy, was just a few bucks. Our financial responsibility was an abstraction, while his family's memories were a sacred, subsidized entitlement. A cold, crystalline clarity settled over me. The years of his failed photography business, propped up by my capital injections disguised as investments, the loans to his father that were never mentioned again, the constant, subtle pressure to pick up the tab, to host, to gift, the way he'd always framed my success as our success, but his failures as his burdens, which I was naturally expected to help bear. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I laughed. It was a short, humorless sound that made even David look away. A mix-up, I repeated, my voice now deadly soft. Right, I'll handle it. Ethan, don't worry about a thing. See, that's my girl, he said, relief flooding his voice. I knew you'd understand. It's not worth fighting about. Love you. Gotta go. My head is killing me. The line went dead. I stood there, holding the phone, staring at the devastating numbers on the desk. My mother's worried eyes were on me. Saskia, honey, maybe we should just... I can manage it. I don't want to cause trouble for you. No, Mom. I walked around the desk and put my hands on her shoulders. You will not pay 1 cent of this. You've already given too much. This is not trouble. This is a line. I kissed her forehead. Go rest. Let me handle it. I waited until she left. Then I turned to David. Secure all the damage. Get detailed. Itemized quotes for full restoration. Do not throw anything away. Document everything. Back in my car. I didn't drive home. I sat in the quiet parking lot of the Vineyard. I opened the banking app on my phone. I scrolled through the transactions on our joint account. The one I funded. Ethan's $3,000 lens purchase last month. The $1,200 charge from a high-end men's boutique. The $500 dinner at French Laundry for his parents' anniversary. I switched apps to the shared cloud storage. Invoices for his studio rent. Paid from my business account for the last 2 years. A scanned IOU from his father for $15,000. Dated 3 years ago. Then I opened Instagram. There was Chloe, beaming in her wedding dress. Best day ever. Thanks to my amazing fam for making it perfect. Hashtag dream wedding. Hashtag Twilight Vines. Hashtag spoiled rotten. Barbara Reed had commented. So proud. Everything was flawless. The venue was to die for. Hashtag blessed. Hashtag family first. I looked at the photos of the lavish arch by the lake, the champagne tower, the grinning faces of the Reed clan. I thought of Ethan's sleepy, dismissive voice. Don't be so transactional. A slow, icy smile touched my lips. It felt foreign on my face. Okay, Ethan. I thought, my mind clicking into a mode more familiar and ruthless than any boardroom negotiation. You want transactional? Let's get transactional. I pulled up my contacts. Not Ethan's. My divorce attorney's mobile number. Then my private banker's. Finally, the number for a discreet and notoriously thorough private investigator colleague had once used. 3 calls, 3 simple, decisive actions, set in motion with the same efficiency I used to dismantle a competitor's market strategy. By the time I started the engine, the plan was clear. The perfect life I'd built. The one with the charming, unambitious husband and his quirky family had just revealed a deep, fundamental fault line. And I, Saskia Van Horn, was going to be the earthquake. I glanced at my reflection in the rear-view mirror. The fury was gone, replaced by a cold, focused resolve. The woman staring back at me wasn't a wife, or a daughter-in-law, or a walking checkbook. She was a strategist, and the game had just changed. The first calls would start ringing on Ethan's phone by tomorrow. The drive back to San Francisco was a 70-mile meditation in cold fury. I didn't call my lawyer, Marcus Thorne, immediately. Strategy required evidence, not emotion. I needed a ledger. By the time I pulled into my building's underground garage, the outlines of that ledger were already etched in my mind, sharp and unforgiving. My penthouse was a monument to the life I'd built. Floor-to-ceiling windows, minimalist decor, breathtaking views of the bay. It was my penthouse, purchased with my bonus the year before I'd met Ethan. Our prenup, which he'd signed after joking I was being morbid, ensured it stayed that way. I poured a finger of expensive scotch, not to drink, but to feel the solid weight of the crystal in my hand. Then I got to work. I started with the personal. 5 years of bank and credit card statements, pulled from the cloud. I created a new spreadsheet, labeled it analysis.xlsx, and began. Column A date, column B payee/payer, column C amount, column D category, column E notes. The entries filled the screen with a damning rhythm. Ethan's like a camera system. $12,500. Category, business investment photography. Note, never repaid. Business, never turned a consistent profit. Frank Reed loan for investment opportunity. $15,000. Category, family loan. Note, 3 years old. No repayment schedule ever discussed. Barbara Reed's special birthday trip to Sonoma Hotel. Spa. Meals. $4,800. Category, gift. Note, initiated by Ethan. Mom's had a tough year. Chloe's final semester tuition shortfall. Stanford, $18.340. Category, educational gift. Note, Ethan, she's family. We can't let her drop out. Monthly subsidized rent for Reed Photography Studio, Market Street. $2.800 per month for 28 months. Category, business support. Note, paid directly from my business account, Van Horn Strategies, LLC. The lease was in my company's name. The list scrolled on. Car payments for his Audi, his premium health insurance, the membership at the Pacific Heights Club he needed for networking, the dinners, the vacations, the constant, dripping tap of just this once, and it's for family. The total, when I finally calculated it, made my breath hitch, not with shock, but with a clarifying, white-hot rage. Over 5 years, the outflow directly attributable to Ethan and his family's sustenance and lifestyle was just over $412,000. My money, my labor, framed as love, as family duty, as investment. A new email popped up. It was from my mother, with the subject line, "For your records, darling." Attached were high-resolution photos of the ruined lawn, the stained linens, and a scanned copy of the wedding invoice. Another email followed, from the estate's accounting service, detailing the gifted items. The wine approximate retail value, $7.000. The floral upgrades, $3.500. And the use of the family's vintage crystal and china, priceless. To Mom. I compiled it all into a neat, brutal PDF. Then, and only then, did I call Marcus. Marcus Thorne's voice was, as ever, a calm baritone. "Saskia, I saw a Napa area code earlier and assumed it was a wine tasting. Your tone suggests it was more of a vinegar tasting. I need to see you. Tomorrow. It's marital, financial, and requires a scalpel, not a Band-Aid." The levity vanished. 9 a.m. My office. Bring everything. Next, I called my private banker, Claudia, at First Republic. "Claudia, I need you to flag all joint account activity from today forward. No large withdrawals without my direct verbal authorization. Also, I need the complete authorization history on my Platinum and Sapphire cards. Specifically, any changes to user privileges in the last 4 years. Is everything all right, Ms. Van Horn?" Claudia asked, her professional mask barely hiding her concern. "Just a precautionary audit." "Claudia, thank you." Lastly, I dialed the number for the investigator, a man named Leo Walsh, recommended by a fiercely pragmatic female, VC I knew. He answered on the first ring. "Walsh? Leo Walsh? My name is Saskia Van Horn. Elise Montague referred me. I require a discreet financial and personal background review. The subject is my husband, Ethan Reed." There was no judgment, only the soft clack of a keyboard. "Understood. Scope? I'll email you a baseline dossier that his business, known associates, family. I need to know about any undisclosed debts, liabilities, business partners, or extracurricular romantic entanglements. The financial deep dive is priority 1. Can you work fast? Retainer dictates speed. Ms. Van Horn. Standard package is 5 business days for a preliminary. I'll pay double for 48 hours. I'm wiring the retainer now." A pause. "You'll have a preliminary report by Thursday night." The machinery was in motion. I sat back, the adrenaline ebbing, leaving a hollow, determined calm. The door lock chimed. Ethan stumbled in, looking wrecked in the way only a 20-something's wedding can wreck a 38-year-old. He grinned when he saw me. "Hey, you're home. I'm dying." That rose turned into acid halfway through the night. He dropped onto the sofa, kicking his shoes off. "So, you smoothed things over with your mom?" I turned my chair to face him. I spoke to her, and to David, the final invoice for the wedding. the one your mother directed to the estate, is $84,756. The lawn repair is $22,000. Mom's gifted contributions were another 10 plus. So, we're looking at a $116,000 mix-up. Ethan. He waved a hand, closing his eyes. God, not this again. Can we not do this today? My head is splitting. Your mom will get over it. No, I said, my voice quiet and even. She won't, and neither will I. You will call your parents and your sister today, and you will inform them that they will be receiving a prorated invoice for their share of the wedding expenses, minus my mother's gifts, and you will arrange for a landscaping company of David's, choosing to be paid, in full, by the end of this week, to repair the damage your guests caused. His eyes snapped open. He sat up, the affable hangover mask slipping into genuine irritation. Are you serious? You want me to bill my parents? My sister? On the day after her wedding? Saskia, that's fucking cruel. It was a party. Things get broken. It's what happens. In what universe? I ask slowly. Does a party involve directing all vendor bills to the host's address without their knowledge? In what world is destroying a professionally maintained landscape and not offering to pay for it what happens? This wasn't a spilled drink on a rental carpet. Ethan, this was calculated disrespect. It's just money. He shouted, standing up. You have plenty of it. Your mom has plenty of it. Why do you have to be so fucking tight about everything? This is why they're intimidated by you. Why my dad calls you the CFO behind your back. We're a family. Families help each other. They don't send itemized bills. The words hung in the air between us. The CFO, that I felt a bizarre urge to laugh. All this time, I'd thought I was a wife, a partner. To them, I was a function, a walking, talking chief financial officer. So that's it, I said, nodding as if a great mystery had been solved. My role is to provide liquidity, to be the backstop for the Reed family's aspirations. And my mother's role is to provide the scenic backdrop. How convenient. Don't twist my words. He spat, running a hand through his hair. You knew what my family was like when you married me. Close-knit, generous, selectively generous. I corrected, generous with other people's resources. I stood, meeting his gaze. The invoice stands. Ethan, pay it, or I will. With what? He sneered, the real resentment bubbling to the surface for the first time. You'll just pay it with your big, important salary, and then hold it over me for the next decade? Like you do with everything? You know, sometimes I think you enjoy lording it all over us. The perfect house, the perfect job, the perfect life you built all by yourself. It's suffocating. There it was, the core of it. My success was not our blessing. It was his burden. My provision was not partnership. It was domination. My phone buzzed on the desk. A text from Chloe. I picked it up and read it aloud. My voice devoid of all inflection. Hey, Saskia. The wedding was literally perfect. Thanks again for letting us use your mom's amazing place. You're the best, sis. Oh, Mom mentioned you were a little upset about some bills. Don't worry about it. I'm sure it'll all work out. By the way, Mark and I were looking at flights to Bora Bora for the honeymoon, but it's kind of pricey. Any chance you have miles or a hookup? Love you. I looked up from the phone. Ethan had the decency to look slightly abashed. See, he said, weakly, she's grateful. She's just excited. She's a leech. I said flatly, and so is your mother, and your father, and you, Ethan, are the conduit. I walked towards the bedroom. I have an early day tomorrow. I'll be sleeping in the guest room. Oh, come on. Don't be like that. He called after me, his voice shifting to a wheedling tone. Let's not fight. I'm sorry. Okay. I'm hungover and stressed. Look, I'll talk to my dad about the lawn. Okay. Maybe we can chip in something. Just don't send them a bill. It's humiliating. I stopped at the doorway, but didn't turn. Good night, Ethan. I closed the guest room door, engaging the simple lock. It wasn't much, but it was a boundary. I leaned against it, listening to him mutter and clatter around in the kitchen. The hollowness inside me was gone, filled now with a solid, granite resolve. The next morning, I was at Marcus Thorne's office by 8:50. He reviewed my spreadsheets, the photos, the invoices. He stroked his chin. The prenup is solid. Separate property remains separate. Commingling is a concern, but the sheer, one-sided nature of the financial flow is in your favor. The wedding fiasco is a brilliant, concrete example of dissipating marital assets for the benefit of one spouse's family. A judge will not look kindly on it. I want to send a demand letter for the wedding costs to his parents and his sister, separately. Marcus's eyebrows shot up. Aggressive. It will escalate the conflict. The conflict is already here. I'm just naming it. And I want to start separating the finances. Now, easy enough. We'll file a separation of property notice. Freeze the joint accounts. Revoke his access to your credit as an authorized user. What about his studio? The lease is in your company's name. A cold satisfaction spread through me. Terminate it. Give him 30 days. Marcus made a note. He'll likely claim financial abuse. He can claim whatever he wants. The data, I said, tapping my spreadsheet, tells the real story. He's a 40-year-old man. It's time he learned how to write his own checks. By the time I left Marcus's office, the legal wheels were turning. My next stop was the bank, where I sat with Claudia and formally revoked all of Ethan's charging privileges. I moved all but a nominal amount from our joint checking into a new, individual account. The direct deposits from my paychecks would now go there. The calls started that afternoon. I was in a strategy session when my personal phone buzzed. Barbara Reed. I sent it to voicemail. It buzzed again. Frank Reed. Then Chloe. Then Ethan. In rapid succession, I silenced the phone. When I emerged at 6 p.m., there were 12 missed calls and a string of increasingly frantic texts. Ethan, 2:14 p.m. What did you do? My card was declined at the gas station. Ethan, 3:30 p.m. My Amex is saying it's inactive. Call me. Ethan, 4:05 p.m. My dad just called me hysterical. Did you send him a lawyer letter? Are you insane? Ethan, 5:55 p.m. Where are you? The landlord just called me about the studio. What the hell is going on? I didn't respond. I drove home. The silence in the car a welcome balm. He was waiting for me, pacing in the living room, his face pale with fury and fear. What did you do? The words were ground out between his teeth. I set my briefcase down calmly. I stopped the bleeding. You cut me off. You sent a fucking legal threat to my parents. Over a party. My own wife. They're not legal threats. Ethan. They're itemized requests for reimbursement for services rendered and damages incurred. It's called accountability. You should try it sometime. You bitch. He whispered, the sound venomous. You cold, calculating bitch. This is how you handle a family disagreement? You sick your lawyer and your banker on us? A disagreement is about where to order takeout. I said, my voice glacial. This is about the systematic exploitation of my family's resources by yours. With your full complicity, the discussion phase is over. He stared at me, and I saw the moment the true panic set in. It wasn't just about the credit cards. It was the scaffolding of his life being kicked away. The studio, the easy money, the facade. You can't do this, he said, but it sounded like a plea. I already have. I walked past him toward the bedroom. I've filed for legal separation. You'll be served the papers tomorrow. You have 30 days to vacate the studio. I'd suggest you start looking for a new place to live as well. I'll be generous. You have 60 days to find an apartment. The color drained completely from his face. You're kicking me out? You're throwing away our marriage over money? I turned to face him one last time. The man I'd loved, or thought I'd loved, was gone. In his place was a stranger, a petulant child whose meal ticket had just been revoked. No, Ethan, I said, my voice finally betraying a sliver of the immense, crushing fatigue I felt. You and your family did that. I'm just finally reading the receipt. The silence that followed my pronouncement was thicker than the San Francisco fog outside our windows. Ethan stared at me, his mouth slightly agape, as if I'd begun speaking in a dead language. The fury had been overtaken by sheer, uncomprehending shock. You can't be serious, he finally stammered. Separation? Over this? Saskia, this is insane. We're married. You don't just pull the plug because of a fight about a party. It's not about the party. Ethan, I said, my voice weary but firm. I walked to the hall closet, pulled out a small carry-on suitcase, and began packing a few essentials from the guest room. It's about the fundamental disrespect, the entitlement, the lee off it all. You and your family saw see me, as a resource, not a partner. That's not a marriage. That's a parasitic hosting agreement. And I'm evicting you. I zipped the suitcase. I'll be staying at the Huntington for a few days. I suggest you use that time to consult a lawyer and to have a very serious conversation with your parents about the $116,000 they owe my mother. You're really leaving? The shock was morphing into a wounded, petulant anger. You're walking out on our home? On me? I stopped at the front door, looking back at him. He stood in the middle of our pristine, expensive living room, a man utterly unequipped to pay for even the rug beneath his feet. A strange, detached pity flickered through me, quickly extinguished. No, I said quietly, I'm not walking out on my home. I'm walking out of a fiction. The papers will be here tomorrow. Don't make this harder than it has to be. The door clicked shut behind me with a finality that echoed in my bones. I didn't go to the hotel. I drove to Twilight Vines. My mother took one look at my face and the suitcase and opened her arms without a word. I didn't cry. I just let her hold me for a long minute. The familiar scent of lavender and sun-warmed linen cutting through the sterile adrenaline of the day. Oh, my brave girl, she murmured into my hair. What a mess. I'm cleaning it up. Mom, I said, pulling back. For good. Over a glass of her potent Cabernet, I laid out the plan, the revoked access, the separation filing, the demand letters. She listened, her face a mask of concern. He won't go quietly. Darling, people like that, they never do. I'm counting on it, I said, and took a long sip. The next morning, the machinery I'd set in motion roared to life. At 9:05 a.m., my phone lit up with a call from Ethan. I sent it to voicemail. A text followed. Saskia, we need to talk. The papers just came. This is a mistake. Call me. I didn't. I was on a video call with Marcus and Claudia, the banker. The separation filing triggers an automatic temporary restraining order regarding assets. Marcus explained, his face crisp on my laptop screen. It formalizes what you've already done. He can't drain accounts or run up debt in your name. Claudia, confirm the financial locks are in place. Claudia's voice was all business. All credit card authorizations for Mr. Reed have been terminated as of 5:01 p.m. yesterday. The joint checking account now has a balance of $500, with daily withdrawal limits of $100. The joint savings has been frozen pending court order. All automatic payments drawing from those accounts for Mr. Reed's personal expenses that his car lease, his phone bill, his gym membership that have been canceled. The automated payment for the studio rent has been stopped, and the landlord, per your instruction, has been notified the lease will terminate in 30 days. Good, Marcus said. Now, the demand letters to the Reeds. I've had them couriered. They should be arriving at their homes and workplaces right about now. At the Reed family home, San Rafael, 10:30 a.m. Barbara Reed's scream of outrage was so loud. Frank later claimed, It made their terrier, Muffin, hide under the sofa. She clutched the thick, cream-colored envelope from Thorne Associates, her perfectly manicured hand trembling. "What is the meaning of this?" she shrieked, waving the letter at Frank, who was trying to read his own copy, his face ashen. It's an invoice," Frank stammered. "For the wedding. And all on. An invoice. From a lawyer. That greedy, ungrateful little bitch. After everything we've done for her. After we welcomed her into this family." Barbara's eyes scanned the legalese, zeroing in on the bottom line. "They want $38,000 from us? From US? For a party? It says we're jointly and severally liable for the vendor costs, minus Eleanor's gifted contributions." Frank read, his voice hollow, "and it cites willful negligence and resulting property damage. This is a legal document. Barb, this is serious. Call Ethan," Barbara commanded. "Call him right now. His wife has lost her mind. At Reed Photography Studio, San Francisco, 10:45 a.m. Ethan's phone had been buzzing nonstop since 8 a.m. First, it was the declined card at his usual coffee shop, leading to a humiliating scramble for cash. Then, a call from the Audi dealership about his missed lease payment. Then, a furious call from his gym, demanding a new form of payment. He was staring at his now useless platinum card when a thick envelope was dropped on his desk by a uniformed courier. "Ethan Reed? Sign here." The separation papers were a cold, formal slap, but it was the letter from the building management company, slipped under his door, that made his blood run cold. "Notice of lease termination. Van Horn Strategies, LLC will not be renewing. You have 30 days to vacate." His studio, his creative sanctuary. The rent was astronomical for this location. He'd never be able to afford it on his own. Panic, sour and metallic, rose in his throat. His phone rang again. It was his mother. He answered, his voice ragged. "Ethan James Reed, what in God's name is going on?" Barbara's voice was a shrill dagger in his ear. "I have a letter from a lawyer. She's billing us for Chloe's wedding. Is this some kind of sick joke?" "It's not a joke, Mom," Ethan said, sinking into his chair, the world tilting around him. She's lost it. She's cut me off. Everything. My cards. The accounts. I got served. Separation papers. And I'm losing the studio." A beat of stunned silence on the other end. Then, a different kind of fury. "She can't do that. You're her husband. That's your money too. That's community property. I don't know. Mom, the prenup. Schmenup." Barbara shrieked. "You've been married for 5 years. You're entitled to half of everything. She can't just kick you out on the street. You need to fight this. Ethan, you need to get a lawyer and fight." "With what?" The words burst out of him, desperate and angry. "She controlled everything. My cards are plastic junk now. I have $500 in the bank. How am I supposed to pay a lawyer?" Another call beeped in his ear. It was his father. Then another. "Chloe." The phone was a live wire in his hand, buzzing incessantly with the panic of his crumbling ecosystem. "Figure it out," Barbara commanded. "Call that friend of yours, the one who does divorce. Do something. And you tell Saskia that if she thinks she can send a bill to this family, she has another think coming. The nerve, after I treated her like a daughter." Ethan hung up, his head in his hands. The walls of his beautiful, exposed brick studio, the studio he'd never paid for, seemed to be closing in. He scrolled frantically through his contacts and called his friend. "Mike, a personal injury attorney with a shady billboard practice. Mike, man, I need help. It's Saskia. She's gone nuclear at the Huntington Hotel, 1:00 p.m. My phone, set to do not disturb, was filling with notifications, voicemails, texts. I scanned them dispassionately. Barbara, 10:48 a.m. "Saskia, this is beyond inappropriate. Call me immediately. We need to have a rational discussion about this. Frank, 11:15 a.m. Saskia, Frank here. I think there's been a terrible misunderstanding. Can we please sit down like adults? Chloe, 11:30 a.m. OMG, Saskia, WTF is this lawyer letter? Mark is freaking out. This is so embarrassing. You're ruining my newlywed bliss. Ethan, 12:15 p.m. Please, we need to talk. I'm at the apartment. Just come home. We can work this out. Ethan, 12:45 p.m. Fine. If this is how you want to play it, my lawyer will be in touch. You're not getting away with this. I took a screenshot of the last one and texted it to Marcus. He's getting a lawyer. As predicted, Marcus wrote back a moment later. Good. Let him spend money he doesn't have. The retainer for a decent family law attorney will eat his $500 in a heartbeat. Stay the course. I ordered room service and opened my laptop. The first email from Leo Walsh. The investigator had arrived. The subject line, preliminary findings, Ethan Reed. The body of the email was succinct, professional, and devastating. Ms. Van Horn, per your retainer, preliminary findings below. Full report to follow. I finance. Subject's photography business. Reed Photography, LLC, has operated at a net loss for 4 consecutive years. Tax returns show significant discrepancies between reported income and lifestyle. Multiple outstanding balances on business credit cards approximate $18.500 total. Not disclosed to you. Personal credit score is 621. 2 liabilities. Subject co-signed a $25.000 personal loan for his sister, Chloe Reed, 18 months ago. Payments are in arrears by 90 days. No evidence this was disclosed. 3 assets. Negligible. Primary asset is a 2019 Audi A5 lease in your name. Business equipment is heavily financed. 4. Extracurricular activity. Preliminary digital forensics. Show extensive. Recent communication, texts. Social media DMs with a former client. Melissa C. Details enclosed. Nature is flirtatious/emotionally intimate. Evidence of one overnight meeting at the St. Regis, Monterey attached. Valet ticket charged to your shared Amex. Room service receipt for 2. Correlation with your business trip to NYC in April. Investigation ongoing. I opened the attachment. There was a copy of a valet ticket from the St. Regis. Dated a weekend I was in New York for a conference. A room service receipt for champagne and chocolate-covered strawberries. And a screenshot of a text thread from Ethan's iCloud backup. A password he'd foolishly used for everything, which I'd had access to. Ethan, can't stop thinking about last weekend. You make me feel alive again. Melissa C. It was magic. But Ethan, your wife. Ethan, don't worry about her. It's complicated, but what we have isn't. I felt nothing. No stab of betrayal. No gut-wrenching pain. Just a cold, clarifying certainty. The final piece of the puzzle had snapped into place, revealing the complete, pathetic picture. The financial leech was also an emotional cheat. Of course he was. I forwarded the entire email to Marcus with a note. Adultery evidence. Financial obfuscation. Use as needed. Then, I picked up the hotel phone and dialed room service for a bottle of their most expensive champagne. Not to dull the pain. To celebrate. The war was on, and I had just intercepted the enemy's battle plans. The bottle of champagne remained unopened. A silent, effervescent monument to my newfound clarity. I spent the evening with Leo Walsh's preliminary report and my own ledger, cross-referencing dates and numbers. The $412.000 outflow to Ethan and his family. The $18.500 in hidden business debt. The $25.000 loan for Chloe he'd co-signed and was now defaulting on. The St. Regis receipt. A $475 splurge on a weekend I was paying for a conference he claimed was a solo creative retreat. Each piece of data was a brick, building an impenetrable wall between the woman I had been and the woman I needed to be. My phone continued to light up like a war zone control panel. The reads had moved from frantic texts to a unified, vitriolic campaign. Barbara's messages grew increasingly unhinged, shifting from faux outrage to outright venom. Barbara, 7:03 p.m. Your mother raised a heartless snob. After all the love we poured into you, you're a disgrace. Frank, 8:15 p.m. Ethan is devastated. This is not how family resolves disputes. We are prepared to mediate, but the invoices are a non-starter. Chloe, 9:42 p.m. You've destroyed my wedding memories. I hope you're happy. Mark's family is mortified. You owe me a huge apology. Ethan's messages ran the gamut. Pleading, angry, threatening, then pleading again. The through line was a profound, staggering sense of injustice. He was the victim. I didn't engage. I forwarded the most threatening ones to Marcus and archived the rest. I was a black hole, absorbing their chaos and emitting nothing but cold, silent resolve. 2 days after I left, he found me, or rather, he staked out my office building. I was leaving late, my mind already on the next day's deposition prep with Marcus, when he stepped out from behind a concrete pillar in the parking garage. Saskia, we need to talk. Now, he looked terrible, unshaven, eyes bloodshot, wearing the same wrinkled shirt from our last confrontation. The charming photographer facade was completely gone, replaced by the raw, panicked man beneath. You're being served with a restraining order if you don't maintain a 100-yard distance. Ethan, I said coolly, not breaking stride as I clicked the unlock button on my key fob. My Tesla's lights flashed. A restraining order? He let out a harsh, disbelieving laugh, moving to block my car door. For what? Talking to my own wife? This is insane. You've frozen me out. You've ruined my credit. You're trying to destroy my family, and am one who needs to be restrained? You're harassing me, and you're blocking my access to my vehicle. Move, or I call security and the police. Your choice. I held up my phone, thumb hovering over the screen. He flinched, but held his ground, his voice dropping to a seething hiss. You think you can just do this? You think with your fancy lawyer and your bank accounts you can just erase me? I'm not some employee you can lay off. Saskia, I'm your husband. Half of what you have is mine. There it was, the gambit, the core belief that had fueled his complacency for years. I lowered my phone, slightly, a cold smile touching my lips. Is that what your lawyer told you? Mike, was it? The one with the billboard off the 101 that says, hurt in a car. Good choice. He must have given you a friends and family discount on the retainer, which, by the way, I hope you didn't put on a credit card. The interest rates are brutal. The flush on his neck told me I'd hit the mark. He'd gone to Mike. You're unbelievable. He spat. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Watching me squirm, holding all the cards. I'm not enjoying it, I said, my voice flat. I'm dealing with the mess you and your family created. And as for cards, I reached into my leather tote and pulled out a slim digital voice recorder. I'd bought it after leaving the penthouse. I pressed play, a slightly tinny but unmistakable version of Ethan's voice, buoyant and conspiratorial, filled the space between us. Of course we're using her family's place. You think I'd pay for this? Mom's got it all figured out. Saskia's mom is loaded, and Saskia's a soft touch. She'll cave. She always does. It's the whole point. Man, it was a clip from the Fuller recording Leo had obtained. Ethan talking to his best man, Mark's brother, at his bachelor party a week before the wedding. The context was clear, the contempt even clearer. Ethan's face went from red to ghostly white. Where did you get that? He whispered. Does it matter? I stopped the recording. The point is, it establishes intent. You never planned to contribute a dime. You and your family conspired to exploit a generous offer. In the eyes of the law, and any sane person, that's fraud. Or, at the very least, bad faith that will make a judge very sympathetic to my claim that you've been dissipating marital assets. It was a joke. He blustered, but the fear in his eyes was real. Private conversation. You can't use that. We'll see, I said mildly. I swiped on my phone, pulled up another file. Then there's the matter of Reed Photography's finances. Your 2023 tax return shows a net loss of $22,000. Yet, according to our joint account statements, the ones I funded, you deposited over $45,000 in client fees that year that never made it to the business account. Care to explain the discrepancy? Where did that cash go, Ethan? Because it didn't go towards our household or your business expenses. He stared at me, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. The casual financial sloppiness he'd always relied on me to clean up was now a noose, and I was calmly laying out the rope. You've been spying on me, he accused, his voice trembling with a new kind of fury to the fury of the exposed. Going through my private things, their marital things. I corrected, and as the primary, indeed only, significant financial contributor, I have a fiduciary right to know where the money went. But since you're so concerned about privacy, I swiped again, bringing up the screenshot of the text exchange with Melissa. I turned the screen towards him. Explain this. The color drained from his face completely. All the bluster, the self-righteous anger, vanished, leaving behind pure, unvarnished terror. That's not what it looks like. He stammered. Really? I asked, my head tilted, because it looks like you were charging a romantic weekend at the St. Regis to our joint Amex while I was in New York. It looks like you were telling another woman she made you feel alive again. It looks, Ethan, like adultery, which, in the state of California, while a no-fault state, can still have a significant impact on spousal support, especially when the adulterous spouse is also the dependent one who's been hiding debt and lying about finances. The legal terms, delivered in my calm, boardroom tone, seemed to finally break him. The dam holding back his panic shattered. It was a mistake. The words exploded from him, desperate and wet. One time, it didn't mean anything. Melissa, she was just, I was lonely. Saskia, you were always working, always busy, always the one in charge. I felt invisible. She listened to me. The pathetic justification hung in the cold garage air. I felt nothing, not even disgust, just a vast, empty space where my love for him used to be. You felt invisible. I repeated, my voice devoid of all emotion. So you took the money I earned, the life I built, the security I provided, and you used it to fund your affair and subsidize your family's greed. And you have the audacity to stand here and tell me you are hard done by. I shook my head slowly. You're not a victim, Ethan. You're a cliché, a lazy, entitled, mediocre cliché who confused being married to a successful woman with being successful himself. The brutal truth of it shattered his last remnant of defiance. His shoulders slumped. The anger bled out, replaced by a wheedling, frantic plea. He reached for my arm. Saskia, please. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. About Melissa. About the money. About my family. All of it. It was stupid. I was stupid. Please, don't do this. We can fix this. We can go to counseling. I'll get a real job. I'll pay my parents back. I'll do anything. I looked at his hand on my coat sleeve, then back at his tear-streaked face. This was the man I'd vowed to share my life with. This sniveling, manipulative child. Take your hand off me, I said, so quietly he had to lean in to hear it. He jerked his hand back as if burned. There's nothing to fix, Ethan. The foundation was rotten. I just didn't want to see it. I opened my car door. Your things from the penthouse will be packed and put in storage by the end of the week. You have 60 days, as per the separation agreement, to find new lodging. I suggest you move in with your parents. I'm sure they'll be thrilled to have you. After all, I slid into the driver's seat, looking up at him one last time. Your family. I closed the door, the soft thunk period at the end of our sentence. Through the window, I saw him standing there, crumpled. As I reversed and drove away, he didn't follow. He just stood in the middle of the concrete garage, looking smaller and more insignificant than I ever remembered. As I merged onto the freeway, heading back to the quiet sanctuary of the Huntington, my phone buzzed. A new email from Leo Walsh. The subject line: full report. Ethan Reed, additional findings. I waited until I was in my hotel room, the door locked and the city lights twinkling below. Before I opened it, the body of the email was clinical. Further to preliminary findings. 1. Subject has been informally advising clients to pay cash for discounts. Substantial evidence suggests unreported cash income over the last 3 years, potentially constituting tax evasion. 2. Subject's communication with Melissa C. Holcomb includes discussion of a potential collaborative photography book project. Subject proposed using marital assets, specifically referencing Saskia's business line of credit, to fund initial printing. No such proposal was ever disclosed to you. 3. Financial forensics indicate a pattern of small, untraceable cash withdrawals approximate $200 to $300 weekly from your joint ATM in the months leading up to the separation filing. Timeline correlates with meetings with Melissa C. I leaned back against the plush headboard. Tax evasion. Proposing to use my business credit for his girlfriend's project. The petty cash withdrawals for his dates. Each detail was more sordid than the last. He hadn't just been a spendthrift. He'd been a secretive, duplicitous parasite. My phone rang. It was Marcus. Saskia. He's retained counsel. Michael D'Amico. Ambulance chaser. Not a threat on the merits. But he'll play dirty. He's already filed a response, alleging financial abuse and attempted economic alienation. He's demanding immediate reinstatement of all joint accounts, temporary spousal support, and exclusive use of the penthouse. I almost laughed. On what grounds? On the grounds that you've left the marital home and are trying to impoverish him. Standard scare tactics. He's also threatening to go to the press with a wealthy executive crush's struggling artist husband. Narrative if we don't back down. I thought of the recordings, the texts, the tax discrepancies. Let him, I said. In fact, encourage him. Have your PR person draft a holding statement. Something vague but strong. MS Van Horn is deeply saddened by the breakdown of her marriage and is focused on a fair and private resolution. She is confident the facts will speak for themselves. Then, send D'Amico a copy of the St. Regis receipt and the text about the business line of credit. Ask him, in writing, if his client would like to amend his filing to include adultery and financial fraud as counterclaims. There was a long, appreciative silence on the other end of the line. You're a natural at this, Marcus said finally, a note of admiration in his voice. Brutal, but effective. It'll shut him up fast. He won't want that in the public record. I'm done playing defense. Marcus, I said, my eyes on the glittering skyline. He wanted a war? He just doesn't realize he brought a credit card to a drone strike. I paused. What about the demand letters to his parents? Oh, they've retained counsel too. A very nervous, small-time family attorney. He's offered to mediate a goodwill payment of $5,000 to make this unfortunate matter go away. My mother's goodwill was worth over $10,000. I replied, they owe 106. The number is non-negotiable. If they don't agree to a payment plan by the end of the week, we file the suit in small claims, publicly. Let's see how they like their names in the Napa Valley Register. I'll convey that, Marcus said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. You know, most of my clients are shaking wrecks at this stage. You're refreshing. I'm not a client having a breakdown. Marcus, I said, finally opening the bottle of champagne. The soft pop was deeply satisfying. I'm a CEO executing a hostile takeover of my own life, and I intend to win. I poured a single glass, the bubbles rising in a joyful, effervescent stream. The first sip was crisp, cold, and tasted like freedom. The battle lines were drawn, the evidence was mounted, and for the first time in years, I was fighting for myself, with nothing left to lose. The champagne-induced clarity of the previous night had hardened into a diamond-edged resolve by morning. Marcus's legal countermaneuver had worked with the efficiency of a scalpel. The threat of exposing Ethan's adultery and financial sleight of hand to the court had silenced his lawyer, Michael D'Amico. The demand for spousal support and the penthouse was abruptly withdrawn. Instead, a terse email arrived, proposing a status quo arrangement pending mediation. Ethan, it seemed, had been advised to shut up and lay low. His family received no such guidance. My phone, which had lulled into a temporary quiet, erupted again mid-morning. This time, it wasn't a call. It was a notification. Chloe had tagged me in an Instagram post. The caption was a masterpiece of passive-aggressive victimhood. When you think you know someone, going through a really tough time right now. So grateful for my real family and true friends who stand by you when others show their true colors. Hashtag betrayed, hashtag heartbroken, hashtag family over everything. The photo was of her and Mark on their wedding day, beaming in front of the now infamous arch at Twilight Vines. The comments were a flood of concerned emojis. And what happened? Queen? Inquiries. Barbara Reed had chimed in. We love you, sweetheart. God reveals people's true hearts in his time. We're praying for you. A few minutes later, a Facebook post from Frank Reed, likely written by Barbara but posted on his dormant account, appeared on my feed. It was a long, rambling quote about gratitude and not biting the hand that feeds you, finishing with, hard times reveal true character. Some people are only generous when it costs them nothing. It was shared by a handful of his and Barbara's boomer friends, accompanied by frowning face reactions. I stared at the screen, a cold fury settling in my stomach. They were weaponizing sentimentality, crafting a narrative for their small social sphere. The poor, hard-working Reeds, betrayed by their cold, wealthy daughter-in-law. It was pathetic, and it was also dangerous. Reputation was a currency, and they were trying to devalue mine. Before I could even call Marcus, my personal email dinged. It was from a reporter at the San Francisco Chronicle's lifestyle column, a woman named Lacey Green, Ms. Van Horn. I'm working on a piece about modern marital dynamics and the intersection of finance and family. I've received some tips about a high-profile local situation that might be relevant. I'd love to get your perspective. Could we chat? Best. Lacey. My blood ran cold. Then hot. Tips that Ethan's lawyers' threat about going to the press hadn't been idle. They'd chosen the smear campaign. They were trying to try the case in the court of public opinion before it ever reached a judge. I forwarded the email to Marcus. He called back instantly. They're idiots, he said, but his tone was grim. This complicates things. A sympathetic, struggling artist versus cutthroat exec. Story could bleed into your professional life. The board at Viridian won't love it. I'm not giving a comment to a gossip columnist. I snapped. You shouldn't, but we can't just ignore it. Silence can be framed as guilt. He paused. We need to get ahead of it. On our terms. How? The interview you have with the Edge magazine next week. The one about women in tech leadership. We move it up. We shape the narrative before they can. The Edge was a respected, feminist-leaning business publication. The interview, scheduled for weeks, was supposed to be about my rise at Viridian. Now, it could be about something else entirely. I took a deep breath, looking out at the city. All right, call the editor. Tell them I'm available to talk today, and get me a PR strategist, not a crisis manager. someone who understands narrative, on it, while Marcus worked the phones. I had to deal with the social media front. I didn't post a rebuttal. Instead, I took a screenshot of Chloe's post and Frank's vague booking. I attached them to an email, along with the demand letter for the wedding costs. I sent it to my mother, Marcus, and my newly retained PR strategist, a sharp woman named Naomi who came highly recommended. My text to Naomi was simple. Background noise. The Reeds are crafting a narrative. We need to be ready with the facts. Naomi's reply was almost instantaneous. Understood. Say nothing online. The Edge interview is our play. We'll frame it as a universal story about boundaries and financial agency. Let them look petty. You'll look principled. The Edge interview happened that afternoon. Via Zoom, the journalist, Anya, was perceptive. We talked about Viridian, about leadership, about the challenges for women in my field. Then, gently, she steered the conversation. Your personal story of building Van Horn strategies from the ground up is inspiring, but that level of success, particularly for a woman, can create unique pressures in personal relationships. How do you navigate that? The expectations, the blurred lines? I met her gaze through the camera. This was the moment. It's a constant calibration. Anya, I said, my voice measured. Success isn't just about building something for yourself. It's about protecting it. Protecting your vision, your team, your legacy. And that protection has to extend to your personal life. You learn that no is a complete sentence. That generosity should be a choice, not an expectation. And that the people who truly value you will value your boundaries as much as your support. I paused, letting the words hang. I've learned that the hard way. I think a lot of high-achieving women do. We're socialized to be caregivers, to smooth things over, to provide. Sometimes, that leads to a dynamic where you're not seen as a partner, but as a resource. And when you finally establish a boundary, you're suddenly the villain, the cold one, the one who's changed. But really, you've just stopped subsidizing bad behavior. Anya was nodding, her fingers flying over her keyboard. That's powerful. Stopped subsidizing bad behavior. Can you elaborate on that? What does that look like in practice? I gave a small, wry smile. In practice, it looks like understanding the difference between supporting a dream and funding a delusion. It looks like recognizing when a helping hand has become a carrying service. And it looks like having the courage to say, this is mine. I built it, and I decide who gets to share in it, and on what terms. It's not about being mercenary. It's about self-preservation and mutual respect. The interview wrapped shortly after. I hadn't named names. I hadn't mentioned a wedding, a vineyard, or a husband, but anyone who knew me, or knew of the Reeds' simmering social media campaign, would read between the lines. The backlash was immediate, but not in the way the Reeds had hoped. The Edge piece, titled The High Cost of Being the Bank, One Executive's Take on Boundaries, went live the next morning. Naomi had worked her magic. It was positioned as a think piece, not tabloid fodder. It was shared across professional women's networks, LinkedIn, and industry forums. The comments were overwhelmingly supportive. Preach. Been there. Paid for that. Stopped subsidizing bad behavior. My new mantra. The emotional labor of being the successful one is never factored in. Thank you for this. My inbox flooded with messages from colleagues, acquaintances, even distant relatives, offering support and sharing their own stories of financial entanglement and family pressure. The narrative was flipping. Ethan's family, however, doubled down. Barbara called me, her voice a shriek on my voicemail. How dare you air our private family business to the press? You narcissistic, selfish witch. You're trying to make us look like gold diggers. We took you in. We loved you. Chloe's posts became more unhinged. Cryptic quotes about snakes in the grass and blood money. Frank, the silent partner in their circus, finally made a direct move. He showed up at my mother's vineyard. David called me, his voice tense. Saskia, Frank Reed is at the gate. He's demanding to see Eleanor. Says it's a family matter. He's agitated. Do not let him on the property. I said, my voice icy. Call the sheriff's non-emergency line. Tell them you have an unwelcome, agitated individual trespassing and causing a disturbance. Then call me back. I heard David relaying the instruction to someone. Then the sound of a car door and Frank's raised, angry voice in the background. I just want to talk to her. This is ridiculous. We're family. My mother came on the line a minute later, her voice shaky. He's here. Saskia, yelling. He says we're destroying his son, that the article is slander. He's not the man I thought I knew. He's a man who's been cut off from the trough. Mom, it makes people ugly. Stay inside. The sheriff is on the way. I'm coming up there. By the time I arrived, a Napa County Sheriff's SUV was idling at the gate. A deputy was speaking calmly to a red-faced Frank Reed, who was gesticulating wildly. My mother stood just inside the property line. David, a protective shadow beside her. That just a misunderstanding. Frank was yelling, my daughter-in-law is having a mental break. She's spreading lies. We have a right to see her mother. Sir, this is private property. The deputy said, his voice firm. You've been asked to leave. You need to calm down and get back in your vehicle, or I'll have to place you under arrest for trespassing and disturbing the peace. Arrest? For talking to my family? She is not your family. I said, walking up. My voice cut through the chaos. Everyone turned. Frank's eyes bulged with hatred. And you are trespassing and harassing my mother. Deputy, this is the individual I reported. His name is Frank Reed. He is not welcome here, now or ever. Saskia, you vicious little. Frank took a step toward me, but the deputy moved smoothly between us. That's enough. Sir, turn around. You're leaving. Now. The deputy's hand went to his belt. The reality of the situation seemed to crash down on Frank. The flashing lights, the uniform, the cold determination on my face, the bluster drained out of him, replaced by a look of bewildered defeat. He shot a final, venomous glance at my mother. You raised a real piece of work. Eleanor, I hope you're proud. He slunk back to his car and drove off, spitting gravel. The deputy took our statements. After he left, I put my arm around my mother. She was trembling. I'm so sorry. Mom, this is my mess. No, she said, her voice gaining strength. She looked toward the empty gate, then back at me, her eyes clear. That man at the gate? That's the mess. The one you're cleaning up. I'm sorry I ever opened my home to them. She squared her shoulders. What's next? Next, I said, watching the dust settle on the road. We stopped playing defense. They've chosen the public arena. They've chosen harassment. Fine. I took out my phone and called Marcus. Frank Reed just showed up at Twilight Vines, harassing my mother. The sheriff has a report. I want to file for a restraining order, not just for me, for my mother, against Frank, Barbara, and Chloe Reed. And I want to press charges for the harassment and the property damage, civilly and criminally. It's time to stop sending invoices. It's time to sue. There was a pause on the other end. That's a significant escalation. Saskia, it will be a war of attrition. It already is. I said, my eyes on the perfect, ordered rows of grapevines, a stark contrast to the chaos they'd invited. But I have the resources, the facts, and the moral high ground, and I'm done letting them think they can scream their way to a settlement. Let's see how they like their day in court. The week following Frank's pathetic attempt at intimidation at Twilight Vines was a study in controlled, meticulous escalation. The legal system, once set in motion, moved with a grinding, impersonal force that cared nothing for the Reeds' hysterics or Ethan's wounded pride. Marcus, with the sheriff's report in hand, filed for civil harassment restraining orders on behalf of my mother and myself. The petitions named Frank, Barbara, and Chloe Reed. The grounds were clear. The orchestrated social media, smear, campaign constituted harassment. Frank's trespass and verbal assault at the Vineyard elevated it, and the pattern of demanding contact via lawyers and family channels after being told to cease created a credible fear of further harassment. The court date was set for 2 weeks out. Simultaneously, Marcus filed the civil suit against the Reeds for the wedding damages. The demand was no longer a polite request from a lawyer. It was a formal complaint. Van Horn versus Reed, et al., seeking $106,000 in damages for breach of an implied contract, unjust enrichment, and property damage. The narrative in the filing was brutal in its simplicity. They requested use of a private estate, incurred debts in its name without authorization, and willfully destroyed property. The proof was appended, the invoices, the before and after photos of the lawn, David's incident report, the damning audio clip of Ethan bragging about the scheme. The papers were served at Frank's school administration office and at Barbara's volunteer shift at the hospital auxiliary. The resulting humiliation was, according to a gleeful text from a still-connected mutual acquaintance, spectacular. My personal life receded into a quiet, productive routine. I moved from the hotel into a sleek, short-term rental apartment in Pacific Heights. I worked. I strategized with Marcus and Naomi, and I had quiet dinners with my mother, who was slowly shedding her anxiety and replacing it with a steely indignation. Ethan, cut off from my money and my attention, became a ghost in the city I owned. His social media went dark. My only window into his world was through Leo Walsh's reports and the occasional, desperate missive. Ethan, 10:02 p.m. You've destroyed my father. He got served at work. Do you have any idea what that did to him? My mother is on sedatives. Is this what you wanted? I didn't respond. He'd chosen his family. He could live with the consequences of their actions. The first legal meeting, a mandated mediation session for the divorce, was held in a sterile conference room in Marcus's building. Ethan arrived with Michael D'Amico, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Ethan himself was a hollowed-out version of the man I'd married. He wore a cheap, ill-fitting suit. The charming dishevelment was gone, replaced by a seediness. Marcus and I sat across from them. The mediator, a bored-looking woman in her 60s, outlined the purpose, to see if we could reach an agreement on asset division and spousal support without a trial. D'Amico started, his tone pugnacious. My client is in dire financial straits due to Ms. Van Horn's unilateral freezing of all marital assets. We're seeking immediate temporary support and a fair division of the community property, which includes her substantial earnings and investments during the marriage. Marcus didn't even look up from his pad. Your client has no access to marital assets because he has a demonstrated history of dissipating them for the benefit of his paramour and his extended family, while concurrently hiding income and accruing secret debt. We have filed a motion for a bono order, arguing my client should be reimbursed for the substantial separate property funds used to subsidize the marriage and his family's lifestyle. We've provided full forensic accounting. He slid a copy of my ledger across the table. Furthermore, we will be opposing any spousal support due to your client's adultery and financial misconduct. We have evidence of both. Ethan flinched as if struck. D'Amico's bluster faltered. Allegations. My client denies any adultery. Really? I spoke for the first time. My voice calm. I opened a folder and pushed a single sheet across the table. It was a blown-up copy of the St. Regis valet ticket. The date circled, alongside a credit card statement showing the charge on our joint Amex. Below, it was a screenshot of my flight itinerary to New York for the same dates. Do you deny you were at the St. Regis Monterey on this weekend? Ethan? The weekend I was presenting at the Tech Frontiers Conference in Manhattan? Ethan's face turned a sickly gray. He looked at D'Amico, panic in his eyes. His lawyer had clearly not been fully briefed. That could be a business meeting. D'Amico spluttered, charging champagne and strawberries for two to a joint marital account for a business meeting? Marcus asked dryly. The tax implications alone are fascinating. We have the full receipt, of course, and the accompanying text messages expressing romantic sentiment to the individual in question, a Ms. Melissa Holcomb. Would you like to see those as well? Or shall we save them for discovery? The mediator leaned forward, her boredom replaced by keen interest. This was no longer a simple money fight. D'Amico placed a hand on Ethan's arm, silencing him. My client's personal life is not the issue here. The issue is the vast disparity in income and Ms. Van Horn's attempt to leave him destitute. The issue, I corrected, my gaze locking on Ethan, is accountability. You had a partnership. You contributed debt, deceit, and disloyalty. I contributed everything else. The ledger is clear. You're not entitled to half of what I built simply because you occupied space nearby while I built it. Ethan finally found his voice. A ragged, broken thing. I was your husband. I supported you. How? The word cracked out like a whip. Name one tangible way you supported my career, my ambitions, my life. That didn't ultimately involve spending my money or creating more work for me. Did you manage the household? No, we had a service I paid for. Did you provide emotional stability? You were having an affair. Did you contribute financially? You hid income and added debt. So tell me, Ethan, how did you support me? The room was silent. He had no answer, only a trembling lower lip and welling tears of self-pity. D'Amico, seeing his case implode, tried a new tack. A judge will look poorly on such a ruthless approach. Ms. Van Horn, the court favors equity, and the court of public opinion won't be kind to a woman who abandons her struggling husband in his time of need. Naomi's work had prepared me for this. I almost smiled. Are you referring to the court of public opinion that just read my interview in The Edge? Or the one that will be reading the profile in Forbes next week? The narrative, Mr. D'Amico, isn't about a struggling husband. It's about financial and emotional exploitation. And we have the receipts. Literally, the mediation was over. It had lasted 20 minutes. As we stood to leave, Ethan lurched to his feet. Saskia, please, you're killing me. Just talk to me. Without the lawyers, I gathered my things. We have nothing to talk about. Ethan, all communication goes through counsel. I walked out, Marcus beside me, leaving Ethan standing there, defeated and alone. His cheap lawyer already packing up with a look of profound irritation. The fallout was swift, with the threat of the adultery and fraud evidence being made public in court filings. D'Amico advised Ethan to settle. The offer Marcus presented was brutal. A one-time payment of $50,000, a fraction of what he'd likely spent on his family and his girlfriend. In exchange for a full release of all claims and a waiver of spousal support, he would keep his heavily financed photography equipment and his personal debt. I would keep everything else. The penthouse, my business, my investments, my future earnings. Ethan, backed into a corner, refused. Pride, or his family's furious coaching, made him dig in. He decided to fight the restraining orders and the civil suit, banking on playing the sympathetic son and brother. It was a catastrophic mistake. The hearing for the restraining orders was a public spectacle. The Reeds arrived as a united, somber family unit. Frank, Barbara, and Chloe, all in what looked like their Sunday best, playing the part of the wronged. Simple folk. I arrived with Marcus and my mother, a picture of calm, professional resolve. Their attorney argued this was a family dispute blown out of proportion. That social media posts were free speech. That Frank's visit was a concerned father-in-law seeking dialogue. That we were using the courts to punish them for a financial disagreement. Then, Marcus called my mother to the stand. Under his gentle questioning, she described the wedding planning, her generous offer, the shock of the invoice, the horror of the destroyed lawn. She described Barbara's phone call dismissing her concerns. She described Frank's furious, red-faced confrontation at her gate, his yelling, the fear she felt on her own property. She was polite, precise, and heartbreakingly credible. Then, Marcus played the audio clip. Ethan's voice, smug and conspiratorial, filled the courtroom. Mom's got it all figured out. Saskia's mom is loaded. And Saskia's a soft touch. She'll cave. She always does. It's the whole point. Man, the judge, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s, listened with a stony expression. She looked at the Reeds, their facade of wounded innocence cracking under the weight of their own son's words. When it was the Reeds' turn, they fell apart. Barbara, on the stand, became defensive and shrill, calling me controlling and vengeful. Frank mumbled about misunderstandings. Chloe burst into theatrical tears, wailing about her ruined wedding. The judge wasn't moved. She granted the restraining orders for my mother and me, effective for 3 years. In her ruling, she stated, "This is not a simple family dispute. This is a pattern of harassment and intimidation following what appears to be a deliberate and bad faith exploitation of generosity. The petitioners have a right to be free from fear and further contact." As the gavel fell, Barbara Reed let out a strangled sob of outrage. "This is a travesty. She's bought the court too." The judge fixed her with a glacial stare. "One more word, Mrs. Reed, and I will hold you in contempt. This hearing is adjourned." We walked out of the courtroom. The victory quiet, but absolute. The Reeds scurried out a side door, avoiding the small group of reporters Naomi had subtly tipped off. The story that appeared online that evening was not about a family feud. It was titled, "Vineyard Owner Granted Restraining Order Against Son-in-Law's Family After Wedding Debt Dispute." It was factual, quoting the judge's bad faith exploitation line. It was devastating. The noose was now officially around their necks. The civil suit was next, and Ethan, with his last desperate card played and lost, was finally, utterly alone. I heard through Leo that he'd been kicked out of his parents' house after the hearing, blamed for the catastrophe. He was crashing on a friend's couch, his photography business deader than ever, his name toxic, his family in ruins, and his money gone. He'd wanted a war. He'd gotten annihilation. And as I settled into the quiet peace of my new apartment, the only sound the distant foghorn on the bay, I felt not triumph, but a profound, unshakable quiet. The storm was passing, and I was still standing on solid ground. The quiet after the restraining order hearing was deceptive, like the eye of a hurricane. The legal victory was complete, the narrative firmly in my favor, but I knew Ethan. Desperation didn't make him reflective, it made him reckless. A cornered animal is at its most dangerous, and Ethan, stripped of money, family, and reputation, was finally in the corner. The first sign of the coming storm wasn't a legal filing. It was a voicemail from a blocked number, left on my office line in the dead of night. Ethan's voice was a ragged whisper, stripped of all pretense, vibrating with a terrifying mixture of pleading and menace. "Saskia, it's me. Please, pick up. I know you're screening. You have to stop this. You've won. Okay, you've destroyed me. My parents won't talk to me. Chloe blames me for everything. My studio's gone. I'm sleeping on Mike's fucking couch, and his dog has fleas. Is this what you wanted? To see me groveling in the dirt? Fine, I'm groveling. Please, just drop the civil suit against my parents. Call off your lawyer. Give me something, a settlement, anything, or I swear to God, I will make you regret this. I'll tell them everything. The real you, the cold, calculating bitch you are when the doors are closed. I'll sell the story to whoever will listen. I'll ruin you right back. Don't think I won't." I saved the recording and forwarded it to Marcus and to a security consultant Naomi had put me in touch with. The threat was explicit. The real me? He'd spent years benefiting from the real me. The only thing he had left to sell were lies. Marcus's response was immediate. This is a gift, a direct threat. We'll add it to the file for the permanent restraining order hearing. It shows continued harassment and intent to harm your reputation. But Ethan, in his profound stupidity, didn't wait for a legal response. He made good on his threat. 2 days later, I got an urgent call from Naomi. Saskia, Ethan. He went to the gossip. The gossip was a bottom-feeding online tabloid, famous for celebrity nip slips and paid for exclusive breakdowns. He sold a story. It's set to go live this afternoon. Their reporter reached out to me for comment, which means they're giving us a heads up to maximize the drama. The angle is my Silicon Valley ice queen wife. The torment behind the glitter. It's bad. He's claiming emotional abuse, that you controlled every penny to isolate him, that you used your wealth to emasculate him and turn his family against him. He's implying you have psychological problems, that your drive is actually a pathology. He's fabricated text messages showing you being cruel, dismissive. I felt a cold, clear focus settle over me. This was it. His last, desperate play. Do they have the fabricated texts? They've shared blurred screenshots as a preview. They look convincing to the untrained eye. Get our digital forensic expert on them. Now, I want a report detailing every inconsistency in the metadata, the font rendering, timestamp alignment, the works. Have it ready in 2 hours. I paused and call Leo Walsh. I need everything he has on Melissa Holcomb, not just the affair. I want to know if she knew he was married, if there are any communications where she expresses discomfort, or where he promises to leave me. Find them. On it. What's the play? The play, I said, opening my laptop, is checkmate. Send the gossip hour no comment that a very specific one. MS Van Horn is saddened by Mr. Reed's continued descent into falsehoods and threats. She refers all inquiries to the recent court rulings and trusts the public to recognize a desperate smear campaign when they see one. Then, send them, off the record, a copy of the St. Regis receipt and the audio clip from the wedding. Don't explain, just attach them. Naomi let out a low whistle. So we don't deny the story. We nuke it from orbit with better, verifiable facts. Exactly. And have Marcus file an emergency motion for a restraining order violation and a cease and desist for defamation. I want the legal wheels turning before the story even hits. The machinery word to life. The digital forensics team. Paid a small fortune for their speed. Delivered within the hour. The fabricated texts were sloppy work. The iMessage bubble spacing was wrong for the iOS version I was using at the alleged time. The timestamps didn't align with cell tower data for my phone. It was all detailed in a crisp 3-page report. Leo Walsh delivered even more. He'd found messages between Ethan and Melissa. In them, Melissa asked, "Are you sure your wife won't find out? I don't want trouble." Ethan's reply, "She's clueless. Trust me. And even if she did, she's so obsessed with her image, she'd never go public. It's our little secret." There was also an email where Ethan pitched Melissa the photography book idea. Writing, S's line of credit is huge. She'll never notice if we seed the initial print run. It's for our future. I had everything I needed. The gossip published their story at 4 p.m., the prime time for online outrage. The headline was as salacious as promised. For about 20 minutes, it trended locally on social media. The comments were a mix of horrified, pearl-clutching, and skeptical. Sounds like a guy who's pissed his meal ticket left. Then, the counter-narrative hit. Not from me. From the journalist at the Chronicle, Lacey Green, the one who'd first reached out. She'd been tipped off by a source close to the situation, Naomi, about the court filings and the existence of contradictory evidence. At 4:25 p.m., she published a follow-up piece to her original inquiry. It was titled, behind the headlines, The paper trail in the Van Horn divorce. It was dry, factual, and devastating. It summarized the civil suit for the wedding damages, quoted the judge's bad faith exploitation ruling, mentioned the granted restraining orders, and crucially, noted that sources with knowledge of the legal proceedings had provided evidence contradicting the claims in the gossip piece, including financial records and documentation of extramarital entanglements. She didn't publish the receipts. She didn't have to. The implication was clear. There was a mountain of evidence on one side, and the word of a man just hit with a restraining order on the other. Then, the social media sleuths took over. An anonymous account, a digital forensic technician paid by Naomi, posted a thread dissecting the fabricated texts, pointing out the digital inconsistencies with clinical precision. Someone else, another of Naomi's operatives, found the public court filings for the civil suit, highlighting the dollar amounts and the audio clip transcript. The story flipped in under an hour. The narrative became one of a scam artist husband, caught red-handed, lashing out with lies. My phone rang. It was Marcus. The cease and desist has been delivered to the gossip and to Ethan. The emergency motion is filed. Also, I just heard from the state bar an anonymous complaint regarding Michael D'Amico's potential suborning of perjury, based on his client's clearly fabricated evidence, has been lodged. He's going to be too busy saving his own license to help Ethan anymore. Good, I said, watching the online tide turn in real time. What about Ethan? He's finished. The judge will grant the permanent restraining order based on the threat and the defamation attempt. The civil suit against his parents is a slam dunk. They have no defense. They'll be on a payment plan for the next decade. And as for your divorce, he paused. His lawyer just called. Ethan is willing to accept your original offer. The $50,000. He'll sign anything. The offer, I said, looking at the messages where Ethan promised Melissa a future funded by my line of credit, has changed. The forensic accounting shows he diverted at least $45,000 in unreported cash income. The $50,000 offer is now $5,000, and it's contingent on him signing a full NDA about our marriage and admitting, in writing, that the statements he made to the gossip were knowingly false. One public peep, and he owes me the full amount of the wedding damages, plus legal fees. Marcus laughed. A short, sharp sound. He'll never agree to that. Then he can take his chances at trial, where I will introduce every text, every receipt, every recording, and the tax evasion evidence Leo found. He'll get nothing, and he might get prosecuted. The choice is his. The choice, as I knew it would be, was no choice at all. The signing was arranged in Marcus's office a week later. The air was thick with defeat. Ethan looked like he hadn't slept in months. He was alone, no lawyer, no family. He'd fired D'Amico or been abandoned by him. He'd gotten a low-level legal aid attorney to witness the signing, a young woman who looked profoundly uncomfortable. The stack of documents was formidable. The divorce settlement, the NDA, the confession regarding the false statements, the quitclaim on the penthouse, the release of all claims. I entered the room with Marcus. Ethan wouldn't meet my eyes. He stared at the table as Marcus walked him through each document in a monotone. By signing, you acknowledge receipt of a one-time payment of $5,000. Waive all rights to spousal support, community property, and future claims. You affirm the statements made to the media outlet known as the Gossipon or About Date were materially false and misleading. You agree to a permanent injunction against discussing the details of your marriage or divorce with any third party. Ethan's hand shook as he signed each page. The scratch of the pen was the only sound. When it was done, he pushed the stack away, finally looking up at me. The hatred was there, but it was dull, exhausted, buried under oceans of shame and ruin. Happy now, he croaked. I looked at him. This stranger I'd once shared a bed with. I felt nothing. No pity. No triumph. Not even contempt. Just a vast, clean emptiness. Happy is irrelevant, I said, my voice calm. It's over. That's all that matters. I sign my copies with a steady hand. The flourish of my signature, decisive and final. Marcus notarized the documents. Copies will be sent to you. The funds will be wired to the account you specified within 3 business days. This concludes our business. Ethan stood, a man hollowed out. He seemed to waver on his feet. He opened his mouth, perhaps for one last plea, one final curse. I stood as well, gathering my copies. I didn't give him the chance. I looked at him, my gaze as impersonal as if he were a piece of furniture. Goodbye, Ethan. I turned and walked out of the room, Marcus following. I didn't look back. I heard the soft click of the door closing behind us, and that was it. 5 years of my life ended with the sound of a door latch. In the elevator, Marcus let out a long breath. It's done. He's bound. The NDA is ironclad. If he breathes a word, he'll be in breach, and more than he could make in a lifetime. I nodded, staring at the descending floor numbers. And his parents? Their lawyer is begging to settle. They'll agree to a structured payment plan for the full amount, plus our legal fees. They'll be paying your mother $50 a month for the next 150 years. But they'll pay. They have no defense. The evidence is incontrovertible. The elevator doors opened to the lobby. San Francisco. Sunlight streamed in. The war was over. Every front. Legal, financial, reputational. I had won. Utterly. Completely. Thank you, Marcus, I said, shaking his hand. It was a privilege. Saskia, truly, what will you do now? I stepped out into the bright, cool afternoon, the city humming around me. The weight I'd carried for years to the weight of his expectations, his family's need, the slow erosion of my own boundaries that was gone. I felt light, unburdened. Now, I said, taking a deep breath of free air, I get to live my life, just mine. 6 months later, Twilight Vines was transformed once more. The south lawn by the lake was a lush, emerald carpet again. No trace of the churned mud and crushed grass. This time, the estate wasn't hosting a wedding. It was hosting the Napa Valley Conservancy's annual summer gala, an event my mother had chaired for a decade. The cause was dear to her, protecting the watershed and open spaces that made the valley beautiful. The irony of celebrating land stewardship at the very spot the Reeds had treated as their personal dumping ground was not lost on me. It felt like a reclamation. I stood on the patio, a glass of Twilight Vines, award-winning Reserve Cabernet in my hand, watching the sunset bleed gold and purple over the vines. The air was filled with the soft murmur of well-dressed philanthropists, the clink of crystal, and live jazz from a tasteful trio. I wore a simple, impeccably cut navy dress. No wedding party frippery. This elegance was understated, earned, and entirely my own. Saskia Van Horn. I should have known you'd be the calm center of the hurricane. I turned to see Lacey Green, the Chronicle reporter, holding a wine glass. She'd been invited to cover the gala, a fact I'd approved. Our relationship had evolved from adversarial to one of mutual professional respect. Lacey, I'm surprised you're not working the room for scandal. I hear the canapés are excellent, but low on drama. She smiled. The drama here is in the silent auction bids. I saw a case of your 18 cab already at $15,000. That's the kind of conflict I can get behind. She took a sip, her gaze shrewd. Seriously, though, you look well rested. The Forbes profile was impressive. Van Horn Strategies named a top boutique firm to watch. That's a long way from the Silicon Valley Ice Queen headlines. A lifetime ago. I agreed. My tone mild. The gossip story had died a swift, unmourned death. Ethan's signed confession and NDA had seen to that. The last I'd heard through the discreet grapevine Leo Walsh maintained. He'd moved to Phoenix. living with a college friend and working as an assistant manager at a chain portrait studio. The poetry was almost too perfect. And the other matter? Lacey asked. Her journalistic curiosity piqued, but her tone careful, respecting the unspoken boundaries we'd established. Concluded, I said, the single word carrying the weight of settled lawsuits, restraining orders, and a divorce decree that was a masterpiece of favorable terms. Everyone has moved on. It was the polite, definitive fiction we would all maintain. My mother appeared then, glowing in a silvery gray dress, slipping her arm through mine. Darling, the director of the Conservancy is desperate to meet you. He thinks you're a fundraising genius after that online campaign you designed pro bono. She nodded at Lacey. Wonderful piece on the watershed threats. Lacey, chilling and important. Thank you, Eleanor. The setting certainly provides the inspiration. Lacey raised her glass in a small salute to me. I'll let you get back to your triumph. Saskia, good to see you. As Lacey melted into the crowd, my mother squeezed my arm. She's right. You know, you do look well. More than well. You look settled. In your own skin. I feel it, I said, and meant it. The constant, low-grade tension of managing Ethan's needs, his family's expectations, the quiet resentment that IT was all gone. The energy I'd spent on that was now channeled into my work, into my friends, into long weekends at the Vineyard helping Mom, not managing a crisis. The gala was a smashing success, raising over $500,000. After the last guest had departed and the staff began the quiet cleanup, Mom and I sat on the stone bench by the lake, the way we had when I was a girl. The water was a black mirror now, reflecting a sky dense with stars. I never properly thanked you, Mom said, her voice soft in the darkness. For what? The gala was all you. No, for being the steel spine I couldn't be. When Frank showed up here, yelling, I was so scared, not of him, but of the ugliness, of the confrontation. You weren't. You faced it all down. For me, for this place. She gestured at the shadowy vines. You protected us. I leaned my head on her shoulder. You gave me the ground to stand on. Mom, the foundation. You showed me what real strength looks like, not in being hard, but in being generous. And then having the courage to protect that generosity when it's abused. I just applied it. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the crickets. Do you ever wonder? She asked tentatively, if you'd done something differently? I knew what she meant. I wonder if I'd seen the signs earlier. The first time his father borrowed money. The first time Ethan made a snide comment about my salary. But wonder doesn't change anything. And I don't regret the ending. I regret that it took me so long to get there. I straightened up, looking at her. But I'm here now, and I'm not making that mistake again. Good, she said, her voice firm. You deserve everything. My brilliant girl, not a project, a partner, or, she added with a wink, just a fabulous, unencumbered life of your own making. That's a valid choice too. I laughed. The sound easy and free. Let's start with the fabulous, unencumbered life. I'm still learning how to live it. A few weeks later, back in the city, I was walking to a lunch meeting when I saw him. Or rather, I saw a ghost. Ethan was sitting at an outdoor table of a cheap cafe, staring into a laptop. He was thinner, his hair cut shorter, cheaper. He wore a generic polo shirt. He looked exactly like what he was. A mid-level employee in a mid-sized city. His dreams of artistic grandeur evaporated into the desert air. He must have been back in the city for some reason, that maybe clearing out the last of his storage unit. Our eyes met, a jolt of surprise, then a complex rush of emotions flashed across his face. Shame, resentment, a flicker of the old, wheedling hope. He half rose from his seat. I didn't break stride. I didn't smile. I didn't frown. I gave him the same polite, distant nod I would give a vaguely familiar stranger on the street, a non-recognition that was more final than any glare of hatred. I saw the hope in his eyes die, replaced by a dull, accepted defeat. He sank back into his chair, disappearing from my periphery and from my life. For the final time, I kept walking, the click of my heels on the sidewalk a confident, steady rhythm. The sun was warm on my face. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from my COO about a new client contract. Another from a friend, asking if I wanted to join a hiking trip to Patagonia in the fall. A third from my mother, a photo of the first grapes turning purple on the vine, with the caption, "The 26 vintage is going to be exceptional." I stopped for a moment, looking at the photos, at the blue sky above, at the vibrant, demanding, beautiful city around me. The ledger was closed. The balance was not just settled. It was profoundly in my favor. I had my peace. I had my work. I had my mother. I had a life built on my own terms, with my own hands, protected by my own will. A line from the Forbes article came back to me, a quote they'd used. True power isn't in having everything. It's in knowing, definitively, what you no longer need. I didn't need a husband who was a dependent. I didn't need the validation of a thankless family. I didn't need the drama, the drain, the constant subtraction. I slipped my phone back into my pocket, a small, genuine smile touching my lips. I turned the corner, the future stretching out before me, bright, uncharted, and entirely mine.